This is Mr. Karsten, and I'm here with,
Mrs. Gunning.
and we are gone somewhere much warmer right now. And so we're going to talk to you today about the literary argument essay.
This is your third essay that you will write on test day. You will do a close reading of prose and poetry, which you have practiced, and then you're going to get this literary argument essay. And it always follows the same sort of pattern. It will start with either a summary or a quote that kind of sets up the idea, and then it'll give you your prompt. So here's the one that we're going to work with today. In many works of fiction, houses take on symbolic importance. Such houses may be literal houses or unconventional ones. Either from your own reading or from the list below, choose a work of fiction in which a literal or unconventional house serves as a significant symbol. That's what they want you to do. Find a house that serves as a symbol. Then in a well-written essay, analyze how this house contributes to an interpretation of the work as a whole. This is the essay where we get to meaning of the work as a whole. Do not merely summarize the plot. Now, got some suggestions. In your response, you need to do the following. You need to respond with a thesis that presents a defensible interpretation. You know how to do that. Provide evidence to support your line of reasoning. You know how to do that. And explain how the evidence supports your line of reasoning, which you also know how to do. Then they also want to see that you've got a high level in your writing, that you're using appropriate grammar and punctuation in communicating your argument. Now, here are some suggestions that they would give. You can look over it. You will always get a fairly long list of pieces that they think would work well for the prompt that you're given. If you look at it a little bit more closely, we've done The Awakening. You could talk about Edna's houses. The House on Mango Street, A Raisin in the Sun if you've taken film studies, To Kill a Mockingbird. But you do not have to limit yourself to this. If there is the book that you read for your independent study, if there's a house in that one, you could talk about that. You could talk about Kurtz's house when Marlowe first sees him with the skulls on the outside. You can choose anything you want, so don't feel like you are limited to their choices. Just a reminder of how they're grading. Out of 6 points, you're going to get 1 point if you respond to the prompt with a defensible thesis. You all can do that. Now, this is a little different. You need evidence and you need reasoning, but your evidence probably will not be quotes. You don't have the piece in front of you. You are not talking about literary devices necessarily. You can mention literary devices, but that's not your focus. Your focus is not to talk about how the author got the idea across. Your focus is to talk about the piece and how it shows that theme. In many ways, this is much more like what you're used to doing in English classes. And then we have our sophistication point. Use your grammar things.
So this house prompt was the AP College Board prompt in 2021, and so they have given some sample student work to show us exactly the kinds of things they're looking for and ways that you can improve. And the first of which is a student who wrote about Toni Morrison's Beloved. And so in this student's introduction, they write, "Homes are representations of selves. Just as each human being lives within the confines of their own mind, each person, save for the homeless, has their own house, filled with their belongings and loved ones, like how a mind is filled with one's memories and relationships. Perhaps in no text is this more true than in Toni Morrison's Nobel Prize-winning Beloved. In the novel, Morrison uses the character's home, 124, to represent the trauma they continually endure, ultimately illustrating that trauma is only remedied by support and love." Now, if you look at that, it's exactly what we've been trying to teach you all semester long. We've got Patow, right? The prompt is clearly evident there. The student is going to be writing about the home, and in this case, it's 124 is the house number. A student mentions the author and the title of the text, and they outline how they're going to walk through it. They're going to represent the trauma that they continually endure, and that implies they'll be introducing that trauma, and then they're going to move on to an argument saying that the trauma is only remedied by support and love, ensuring they tie all that back to houses. And then it's got that meaning of the work as a wholeness to it. They're not just going to describe the house or tell kind of that they live there and what it looks like. The house is more than just a home in this text. And that's exactly what the student did. For those of you who have read Beloved, great. If you haven't, main character Seth is a slave who kills her baby in order to save her child from slavery. And then later, once freed, is haunted at home by that trauma. The trauma, and this is kind of the next movement in the paper, is the next paragraph, creates conflict for all the characters that enter that home, even chasing some of them from the home. As the novel progresses, we meet a character named Paul D, who comes into the home, and he begins to challenge Seth to think about and face that trauma, and inevitably the town shows up literally at the home in order to show their love and support for Seth as well. And then the student finishes the essay, and it was really written kind of like the final part of the argument / conclusion, articulating that the home, 124, symbolizes Seth's psyche, and it's not until she opens her home that resolution can really happen. And so that's a beautiful line of reasoning. It gets to the fact that the home is central to the storyline and that it's more than just a house. Here's another one that didn't do quite as well, although they got full points for their thesis. In House of Leaves by Mark Danielewski, the novel mostly details the story or documentary of a man and his family whose house is larger on the inside than it is on the outside. The house signifies a certain overwhelming horror as various characters venture deeper and deeper into the ever-expanding house. The house is almost like a cave system for the characters to explore and highlights all of the insignificant parts of life. The house makes the characters question their morals and overall place in the world. Now, the College Board deemed this an appropriate enough thesis because it does make an argument. But I would even argue from this thesis, I'm not entirely sure where this essay is going to go. And that's kind of where the outline left it. The student started writing about how the house is bigger than inside than outside and is ever changing, and did more of just contextualizing what is the house. Now, I don't think that's a problem, but then just jumps right into house is representative of the madness of the characters. And this student didn't really support that with a lot of specific examples, and then made this kind of closing argument that the house gives characters a purpose, but not one that feels truly worth it. And that was really underdeveloped in this essay. I don't know that they ever gave enough from the text to substantiate that claim. The third example we have here is one that did not score well at all, but again got full marks for the thesis. In the novel The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, Huck's house is nature. Houses often provide a sense of comfort and security. As Huck and Jim are traveling up and down the Mississippi River, the only house that remains constant for Huck is nature. Again, this is the potential. I mean, there's an argument being laid out there, but this student really didn't support it. Largely a one-paragraph summary of the story that rambled and said Jim is a runaway slave, Huck doesn't see him that way, and nature is the only place they feel comfortable and most at home. And the College Board pointed out that the student really only gave one specific scene from the text that didn't even really support the claim so much as just shared a part of the story. And so, you're going to be doing this in class today with a different prompt. We gave you the example of houses as a way of thinking about this, but you're going to be writing about something new, and you will be writing about any text you wish. It does not have to be The Awakening, although The Awakening is fine. First thing you need to do is read and understand the prompt. What is it asking you to analyze? Annotate the prompt, underline what it is that you need to do here. Then you will have to talk about plot, but your discussion of plot and character must have a purpose. Do not summarize. Use plot points as support for the argument that you are making. Make sure your ideas have a clear line of reasoning and that you aren't simply just listing them. That second example with the house, that one felt just a little bit like throwing things out there. There was no real plan, whereas the Beloved one really walked through the story in a more sophisticated way. You don't have to talk about literary devices. You may, if you want to talk about how there's a symbol that, helps illustrate your argument, or maybe specific characterization does something good for what you're trying to say. Those are excellent. but you're not going to be dropping similes and metaphors and alliteration here because you don't have the text to quote. That doesn't mean you shouldn't give specific examples. Mentioning character names, specific plot points, settings that are important, those are excellent. You just won't be quoting the text unless you happen to remember some. If there was a very quotable quote from your book that you have in the back of your head, you may use it, but it is not required. And so, we're going to set you loose on a literary argument essay today. Do your best. It will be timed, and the substitute will let you know when to start and when to stop. Thank you.